The issue of paedophilia, look, it's very easy to be sensational about this and play tabloid and scream and shout. This is a very complex issue. There are men who are attracted sexually to children. It's invariably, almost exclusively men. Now, how do we deal with that? Many of those men, some would argue most of those men, fight on a regular, maybe a daily basis to make sure that they keep these temptations in check, would never break the law, are often quite self-loathing about what they are. Those people have to be helped. I'm not here to play the bleeding heart with you or anything, but they're the people who we know need a group around them, a community, to make sure they don't break the law and don't do something which is vile, grotesque, immoral, and of course illegal. Once you break down barriers, when you say, well, it might not be so bad, well, those who are already breaking the law and offending and raping children, for them, whatever, they'll carry on being what they are. But for those others who are fighting this, they're going to say, well, maybe it isn't so bad. And I mention this because this is from my friend Damien Thompson, who's a journalist in the UK. And he writes this: Britain's most persecuted minority, he's being sarcastic, have found a new advocate. An article this morning in The Guardian, a liberal paper, the British version of the Toronto Star, by feature writer John Henley, addresses misconceptions about pedophiles, quoting one expert who believes that, quote, it is the quality of the relationship that matters. And then the report goes on at great length to really try to normalize in some ways pedophilia. Barbara Kay joins us from Montreal. Barbara, this is terrifying stuff.
Yes, I agree, Michael. I think that when people start talking about quality of the relationship and all that sort of thing, this is a cover-up for, or they're trying to put a gloss on their own kind of depraved instincts. And one of the words that they will often use, which I believe is used in this context, is continuum.
Yeah.
In other words, there's no objective right or wrong. This is about people's feelings, and as long as these are authentic feelings, we see a lot of buzzwords used in therapy. We have a very therapized culture, but therapy is very much the opposite of what people who believe in right and wrong, can accept. And it's a very narcissistic way of looking at relationships.
Yes, it is. And it's very interesting where it's coming from. It's coming from certain elements, aspects within the academic circles, and a few people in media who seem to be their foot soldiers. They use terms like intergenerational sex rather than pedophilia. They talk, as you say, about a continuum, that we are sexual from birth onwards, and it depends on the age. And this is very important, the quality of. So they will argue that a child, 7, 8, 9, can give consent. Now, a child may say yes to something which is absolutely harmful to that child. Candy can change a child's opinion. And what they're saying in this report, and this report has some standing, and it was reiterated with approval in the Guardian newspaper, an important newspaper, international newspaper, they're saying that it's okay under some circumstances to rape children.
Well, you're quite right, and this whole idea that children can give consent to being seduced is so really terrible, and I find that when newspapers start listening to academics, they get a sort of a glazed over, the idea that somebody is an expert or that they have a PhD suddenly confers on them some kind of moral authority. But we know, Michael, that some of the worst ideas in history have come straight out of the academy. And in fact, most of the worst ideas in history, nationalist socialism and communism, and all kinds of other dreadful ideas come straight out of the universities. So that's the last place I would look for a moral authority.
Yes, exactly. Now, there is some origin in this. I suppose it would have been the 1960s and the decade following, when we said that if you felt anyway, really, acting upon it was not bad or wrong. If you felt it, act upon it. Now, in some areas that was acceptable. I mean, for example, we'd criminalize homosexuality, which I think was inappropriate. But we kept pushing further and further and further. So it wasn't just gay people being liberated from maybe going to prison for their sexuality, which is obviously the wrong thing to do. It was saying, even if you feel attracted to someone who is very young, even if you're attracted to several people simultaneously, all of that is okay if you feel like it. And honestly, Barbara, I think within 10 years, if not less, there will be more and more conferences and debates and seminars where people will advocate intergenerational sex, and they'll get a round of applause at the end.
Actually, I'm not sure. I mean, sometimes I worry about that too, but I actually think there's a lot of pushback in our culture.
Really?
If you look back at the 70s was the height of this sort of idea. If you look at a movie like Manhattan with Woody Allen dating a 17-year-old girl with her father's or her parents' approval,
Yeah.
there was a great deal of that stuff then. And then there was a lot of pushback against it. I don't think that ordinary people are going to go for this stuff. I do believe people will try because, look, if you look at incestuous relationships, you see that parents do groom their children and make their children feel that this is how adults love children, and all children want to be loved. Any child can be talked into anything. They can be brutalized too.
Yes.
You take children to dog fights, and pretty soon they'll be indifferent to cruelty to animals. I mean, come on, children are very malleable people, and to put this in the guise of quality of relationship or anything, that adds to the depravity of the act.
Yes, doesn't it just? Always a pleasure to interview you, even if the subject is not pleasurable. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael.